Oh, hi.
Pick a card.
Any card?
Any card.
Explain containerization. I can do that. So funny you should ask. We started out with a problem, and that problem was the overall complexity of the services that we hosted in our Azure cloud. We had multiple database types, multiple languages and frameworks we were using within our web services, and multiple hosted types of UI applications. And as our web services and applications grew, so did the number of frameworks and languages that we used. And all of that made the process of setting up a local development environment incredibly complex, to the point where all of our engineers, both in the US and India, to do all of their engineering and all of their testing against our cloud services, which rapidly drove up costs as our Azure spending doesn't just come from the number of services that we use, it's the amount of data we transfer back and forth. And these tests and engineering connections were running up costs very, very quickly, along with the sheer number of environments that we were managing. Because we were managing 4 different environments: production, staging, QA, and dev. And we looked at this and asked ourselves if there's any way that we can simplify this whole process. And that's where we decided to bring Docker into the mix. So the idea was to pull Docker into our engineering process and our continuous integration processes to simplify this whole stack, to make every service agnostic of the languages and frameworks that needed to be used, and to reduce the number of requests out to these services and the sheer number of environments that we're managing. So by setting up an easy to build Docker environment for all of our engineers, we were able to cut out all of these connections to our remote services. And in the long run, also cut out some of the needless non-prod services that we are managing in Azure. And so this also led to a solution for a problem that we had in the future, which was we have customers who would like to manage our entire suite of web services in their local premise. So without any connections to the outside world. So we would need to take this entire cloud platform and host it in a local building without any connections to the outside world. And that is where Docker came in. So that led to the solution that we've been cooking up with containerization for the past 6 months. So we started from the very beginning, which was to containerize all of our services, databases, and web applications. This was the easy part. All we had to do was drop a Docker file into each one, and our databases themselves actually had open source images available in Docker Hub that we can just pull from right away. So that was taking care of us right out of the box. Then we moved on to our web services and applications. Again, just as easy as dropping a Docker file in, running a Docker build, and then pushing that to our remote container registry. From there, we still had a problem, which was this series of connections and integrations between all of our services still needed to be configured by the engineers who were setting up the environment on their local machine. So we took this one step further and pulled in Docker Compose. So we wrapped our entire suite of services in a single Docker Compose script, which allowed us to pre-configure all of these integration points, set all of the port mapping for all of the containers that were running in this whole suite, and the environment variables that allowed us to configure the various points in our web services and web applications, and the volume management to allow us to persist data as we tore down and then spun up all of our containers. We decided this wasn't even enough. We needed to make it more simple because we're trying to get a group of developers to do something new. And how do you do that? You make it simple and you make it well documented. So we simplified this process even further by adding and wrapping this entire Docker Compose and suite of web services in a command line interface, which we finally called the Sandbox CLI. So this allowed our engineers to jump in and spin up this entire suite of services with a single command and initialize our databases, which needed to be pre-configured, and provide our developers with easy shortcuts as they run through the development process to speed up the process of tearing down, restarting, and updating all of the various containers that we are managing in this suite of web services. So once this process was in place, this allowed our engineers to easily set up the entire suite of services on their laptop with a single command, the shortcuts that they need to speed up their development process, and to be able to swap out images with instances that are running on their local machine as they develop.